Hello everyone, my name is Borax and I've been on a mission to play and rate every single champion in the support role. Thanks to a democratic vote, today we'll be looking at Poppy, and the reasons why she could work as a support include a passive which grants her a % health max shield, a Q which deals % max health damage and leaves an area that slows enemies, a W which passively grants her 10% bonus armor and MR, which increases to 20% when she falls below 40% health. When activated, this ability grants Poppy 40% movement speed and an aura which stops dashes that would occur in its area. Then you have your E, which pushes enemies, and if they land into a wall, it will stun them for up to 2 seconds at max rank. Finally, she has her ultimate, which can either knock enemies up for a short duration, or knock enemies towards their base instead. Even though she was an off-meta support pick, she has been played in pro play in the past, so how viable is she in Season 12? Well, let's find out together, as I rate Poppy, the Keeper of the Hammer, on her ability to be played in the support role. In the early game, I like to rate a support's ability to invade lane and roam. Before Poppy's rework, I was a bit of a Poppy main, and she was the first champion that I ever got a penta on. The only ability that has pretty much stayed the same is E, and it's going to be the ability you want to start with, especially if you're looking to invade. Poppy can be okay at invading if you can find an enemy near a wall, but you probably will have to commit your flash as the E range isn't the longest. If you can get the stun off, it is potent as it does last 1.6 seconds level 1. But overall, I think her invading is rather risky, as if you don't get the stun off, then you are just a Poppy that's closer to the enemies and they can easily kill you, so I'll give her a B- for this category. Now let's talk about laning, where I like to judge a champion based on 3 categories: poking, peeling, and all-inning. Ranged champions are so much better at poking than melee characters because at least they can mix in their autos even if they have nothing else. Poppy does have a passive she can use to poke, as it counts as a bit of a ranged ability, but it's only up every 13 seconds, which isn't amazing. It only does 20 bonus damage level 1, which isn't great. So, most of the time you'll be looking to play more passively in lane, unless of course you can get that level 2 power spike where you can E in and follow up with a Q. But if you don't hit them into a wall, you won't do a ton of damage, but if you can get them in the wall, it is pretty solid. I think for poking, I will give Poppy a D. The shield from her passive isn't bad at keeping her alive against poke a bit, but it's not great overall. If I had to describe Poppy's playstyle in the support role, I'd say it's kind of like a Braum, where you are a tanky champion who wants to focus on staying near their carries and try to peel for them and only going forward when you can get a clear advantage. That being said, Braum is usually better at peeling because he has an ability that can block projectiles, while Poppy has her W that can only block dashes. Her slow is also a bit underwhelming, as it only starts off at 20% level 1, and when maxed it only climbs up to 40%. Your E is decent at peeling, as you can disrupt where the enemy wants to go, but then that makes you a prime target for the enemies to target, which can easily land to your demise. She is exceptional against champions with dashes, but there aren't that many in the support or ADC role. If they do get picked, she is an amazing peeler, but in most cases it's more of an A- rating than anything else, as her main hard CC ability is conditional. Her ultimate though can be a great peel tool, shooting people away before a play can even develop. Now I'm a very aggressive support player, sometimes to a fault, and love to all in. Poppy can be decent at this in the right matchups. If the enemy is picking Samira, Lucian, or Tristana, you can E forward on top of them, then use your W so that they can't use their dash move to get away. If you are good at Poppy, you can even hold your W until you see their animation to maximize its effectiveness. The major downside of Poppy's all-in though is that you can't hard CC people unless they are next to a wall, which means enemies should be aware of this and therefore will stay in the middle of the lane. When you engage by pressing E, you are pushing them away from your ADC, which is bad, and if you aren't tanky enough, you can just die. I was a bit underwhelmed by Poppy's all-in and would rate it at a B+. It is situational, but when it works it does feel nice, especially with her solid Q damage even in the support role. One of the best ways you can engage is by looking to flank your own lane so you can push enemies towards your team, but that can be tricky to accomplish. Now that we've talked about Poppy's laning prowess, let's rate the matchups that she might have to face. If you follow this channel, then you know that I disdain Morgana and would say that she's the League of Legends equivalent of stepping on someone's foot during a basketball game and spraining your ankle. I hate this matchup because her black shield stops your engage, and her range and CC can be quite oppressive. Poppy is a polarized support because she has a lot of bad matchups, but then she has some pretty good ones. The terrible ones are those long-range poke champions who you have no real way to punish. Then I think Poppy is actually pretty bad against enchanters, as they can just poke you, stay away from your engage range, and safely scale up throughout the game. I think Braum, Thresh, and Blitz are all kind of 50-50 matchups, as you can do decent damage to them with your Q, and in theory they shouldn't have too much kill threat on you if you proc Aftershock. Lanes I think will be Poppy favored, especially if you're good at Poppy, are these champions that have a bit of a dash that you can cancel with your W if you time it properly, and you are standing on top of your carries. Two champions I think Poppy can respond well into are Leona and Pyke, especially early on, as Leona shouldn't be able to get on top of you if you have W ready to cancel her E route. Fair warning though, your W cooldown is 20 seconds level 1, which means Leona will have a window to go in, and same with Pyke with his E ability, but I still think that you do a decent job of neutralizing these champions for an off-meta pick. Finally, we have a bunch of champions in the who plays these guys even, as I'm waiting to see people play these champions in my games. Now let's talk about ADCs that you want to pair Poppy with. Poppy is pretty decent actually with long-range ADCs like Varus, Xerath, Ziggs, or Ezreal, as her weakness is heavy engage, which Poppy can prevent by standing next to that carry with her W ready, giving them the freedom to poke away. Also, special shout out to the Poppy and Nivea bot lane for the wall creation that you can use to proc your stun, which if you're curious and seen, I did play like 2 years ago in this video. But in the hypothetical case that your ADC is a useless bonobo, then you might want to consider roaming from time to time, so let's talk about that. When Poppy gets picked in pro play, it's usually because her W is just so good against mobility and her ganks are fairly decent. In fact, I actually quite like jungle Poppy, especially with her Predator build, because if you pop that bad boy and combine it with her W movement speed, you can fly in behind people and either push them towards your team or ideally knock them into a wall for that juicy stun. Laning as Poppy is rather boring because the chances you get the stun off are far and few between, but when you roam, you'll be fighting around the jungle where there are a ton of obstacles. I have a lot of regrets that I didn't try out Predator Poppy support, as I think you should really focus on roaming with this champion, and I'll give her a S for this category. It's strong, and you can minimize enemies' counterplay by cancelling their dashes, but the engage range is a bit too short for me to put her at the tippy top for this category. Although, I will also mention that she utilizes Hex Flash really well, and you can look for some spicy roams with this rune. Let's give Poppy a rating for her ability to support in the early game, which will slot at a B+. Her absolute lack of poke makes her laning phase rather difficult, and you don't make up for it enough when it comes to peeling or all-inning. Her roaming does prevent me from taking her rating any higher, because I think she performs a lot better outside of the bot lane 2v2, which makes me wonder, how does she fare in the...
I'm no hero, just a yordle with a hammer.
In the late game, responsibilities of support I like to rate include their ability to get picks and to team fight. Poppy is great at getting picks, especially if you can catch an opponent unawares and knock them into a wall, as the CC at max rank is a whopping 2 seconds. The problem is getting people into that wall, so sometimes you might have to get creative, like using your flash to ensure that you can get them into there. Another way you can look to get picks is by building the mythic turbo chem tank and charging at enemies until you're in E range, then pressing W so that they can't escape. But the problem with this is if you didn't actually hard CC them, you'll be so far away from your team and aren't tanky enough to scrap with most people. For getting picks, I will give Poppy an A-. It is solid if you get them into the wall, but it's trickier than you might think. Now let's talk about team fighting, where support's responsibilities include engaging, peeling, and sometimes dealing damage. Your best Poppy engage will be to run in with Turbo Chem Tank, E in your target, and then tap in your ultimate to knock them up. It's an okay engage, but it's honestly not the best, and this whole time I was wondering to myself why I feel like Poppy kind of blows in these categories, and I've realized it's because not only is her hard CC conditional, but it's also single target, and I've spoiled myself recently by playing a ton of AoE CC champions, which I think are a lot more effective in the support role overall. But for engaging, I will give Poppy's support a B- rating. It's okay, but pretty clunky, and can oftentimes just lead to you into your brains out if you don't execute it properly with your team. Her W is nice though in preventing enemies with dashes from running away from your teammates' engage. Peeling on Poppy is a different story though, as she's great at this. Oh, what's that? Ranger wants to go in on your team? Too bad. I have a basic ability which just renders your ulti useless here. Okay, sure, you can wait it out, but even if they do still try to commit, you can knock some of the enemies away with your ult and survive a lot of time with your tankiness and passive shielding. While I wish Poppy was more like an Alistar, she's truthfully, again, like that Braum that just wants to stand next to her carries, keeping them safe from engage, and letting them dish out their damage. Your kit is all around amazing for this, as you have that W to stop dashes, a Q to slow enemies, an E to knock them away a bit, and an ultimate to knock them away a ton. For peeling, Poppy finally deserves some love and gets an S rating. She can be a bit weak against bruisers that don't care about your W, yet your E is still decent at keeping them away, and against assassins, she's amazing and a huge counter. Poppy does an okay amount of damage, especially for a support. Your EQ ult passive combo is a decent amount of burst that can execute relatively low targets, and isn't that hard to pull off, but that's only for finishing off people, and as a support, you usually want to be doing damage more up front than waiting around. I think a B- rating here is alright, because percent max health damage is strong no matter how behind you are, but it's so short range and much better against tanks and squishies, which are targets you don't really want to focus anyways. Before we rate Poppy's overall ability to support, let's look at the runes and items that I would recommend. For runes, I see 3 options. The first one is Aftershock, if you like to go into the thick of things and want the resistances to help you survive. It's also really good with Poppy's W passive, and you are getting even more value from all of the resistances. The second rune option is Guardian in range matches where you won't be able to proc Aftershock and you want to provide as much peel as possible for your ADC. The final rune option is Predator if you want to go for a more roaming support style, which is very valid on Poppy as you can show up behind people and either stun them or shove them towards people. You can also take Ingenious Hunter, which I do greatly enjoy, especially in the support role, but Relentless Hunter isn't bad either if you just want more passive movement speed. Now let's talk about items. For your gold income item, Steel Shoulder Guards is the best option as your AD scalings are better than AP. Then you want to go for your boots, and there are 3 options to go here. The first 2 are Plated Steel Caps and Mercury Treads because they are good items anyways, and resistances gain added benefit because of her W passive. The other option would be Moby Boots if you're going to go for the more roaming playstyle. The best build path I like to go was Turbo Chem Tank, as it greatly enhances your ability to engage with the movement speed and slow it grants. The other mythic option if you want to focus more on peeling is the classic Locket option. Poppy is also a great candidate for the Randuin's Omens rush that sub supports go for, as she wants to stay on top of people, and the active is great at helping her do that, and it will also reduce the damage that they are able to deal to your team. Another item that I usually ended up building was Thornmail, as there's so much healing in the game, and Poppy can proc it with her E. Another item I like to build sometimes if I have extra gold is Anathema's Chains to reduce the enemy carry's tenacity and make sure you don't get blown up by them as easily. Now that we've talked about the runes and items, let's give Poppy an overall rating for her ability to support, which will slot at a S-. Before the buffs to her W and ult, I was going to put Poppy in the A+ tier, but now with a whopping 4 seconds shaved off her W and her ultimate ability becoming more impactful in both engaging and peeling, I actually think Poppy really belongs in the support role. When would I recommend you play Poppy's support? If the enemy team has a ton of dashes, then she is a great answer into those champions, as she can shut down that really important part of their kit. I also really like playing Poppy with a more poke-centric team, as you don't have the best engage in the world, and you can focus more on just keeping them alive with your W when the enemy team feels the need to force the issue. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and leave a like, that would be amazing, and if you consider subscribing, that would make my day. Again, thanks for watching. I want to wish you good luck and have fun if you're playing Poppy support for yourself.